Last year, I learned the hard way that running a spray drone business is not just about flying spray drones. It's about efficiency, systems, and being prepared for anything. Today, we're going to walk through the three biggest things I learned last year and what I'm doing to improve this year. My name is Silas Steiner. I'm the owner of Thrive. We're a spray drone company located in Central Illinois, and I've been running this business for 2 years now. We're going to go back to last year and talk about the three biggest lessons I learned and how this year, running this as a full-time business, I am working to improve those things to improve my business. Last year, the number one problem I think we had in our business was just the need for better systems, whether that be standard operating procedures or actual software that helps us do our job better. So the first area I saw this problem was when we would have a farmer call us or whoever we were working with and give us a field they wanted to spray. There was multiple ways we went about it. Some people would drop a pin on a Google map and send that over text. Some people would actually send us through email shape files from their John Deere Operations Center or Ag Leader SMS, whichever system they used, and we would then import those shape files. And sometimes it was just a piece of paper, here's the field, go find it. So my goal for improving that this year, the workflow, is one, going more towards the software side so we can know for sure we're at the correct field, because you can have issues sometimes with dropping a pin, or paper works fine too, but it's just a little outdated for the tech we are using. So number one, having our fields organized in a system where we can find them easily and be able to access them. So what is our solution for that? Well, there's a software out there by Rantizo called AcreConnect, and I used this last year, but not to its full extent. It was more after the field went done, or at the end of the day, end of the week, whatever, I'd go back through and re-input all of our information based on these sheets that I had, or going back through my texts, or going back through my email and my flight logs and gathering all that information into that software. Going forward this year, the software AcreConnect is where we will be going first to map out the field. As soon as someone sends us a field, we will map it out in there, input all of our chemical information, any other instructions, and it'll all just be in one simple database. So with that, we'll be able to bring in shape files from John Deere Ops Center, Ag Leader SMS, or any other software people are using. We'll be able to find those fields and get them shape files into AcreConnect. Now from there, where does it go? Well, when it goes to our drone remote controller, those boundaries don't always work. So another system has to be in place for the actual boundary we are going to use to fly the drone off of. Because when we get sent a shape file from a planter and there's a tree line on the edge, I mean, most of the time the farmer, grower, landowner is getting right up to the trees, even underneath the trees, and we obviously can't fly through trees. So one thing we are going to do to improve our workflow this year is have those fields with tree lines or any other obstacles pre-mapped. Square, flat fields in the open, not as big of a deal. Usually you can get by with just a shape file or aerial imagery from Google, but it's those fields that are odd shaped with tree lines that we need to go out there and pre-map just to eliminate any issues with connectivity or the drone getting too close to trees and eliminate risk. That's basically just to eliminate risk. Number two is just kind of along with that, field names and organization, just having them labeled correctly throughout all of our different software and systems. That is a big deal, I think, so it makes them easy to find. Lastly, just application, chemical record keeping is a big deal. Also, having a system in place to where we're not waiting on chemical, waiting on hot loads, because that was something we ran into last year where we didn't have the system in place, we weren't prepared, and sometimes we'd be running to pick up chemicals here, running here to pick up a hot load, and waiting. So anytime you're not flying, that's downtime. We need a system to better prepare for getting those chemical loads, and part of that is on my part, and part of that is the people we work with, communicating with them better and just being better prepared. So The last thing I want to mention in systems is all the compliance. So this software AcreConnect is huge with that. Really cool compliance feature, works really well, super simple, easy to use. And also the other thing I use is 1-800-WXBrief.com. I use this for filing NOTAMs. Need to do better at that. And also weather. You can actually, they have a phone number you can text to get your METAR and TAFs weather reports, and you just text it to the nearest airport, put in the nearest airport, and it'll send back a current weather update. So that's kind of helpful, as well as the CAP system to make sure we have proper airspace clearance if you're flying next to an airport or anything. So that is number one biggest flaw I saw in my business last year, and kind of some steps I'm taking to mitigate that going forward. The second thing I learned last year is that swarming multiple drones is not always the most efficient. Let me tell you why. So first of all, we get to a field, we have 2 drones, especially the very first time we were flying 2 drones in the same field. It took way longer to set up the field than I would have ever imagined. So say you have an 80-acre field and you want to split that in half and fly both drones. Well, there's multiple ways you can do that. First of all, you can draw 2 completely separate boundaries and have each drone just fly their own field. Obviously, that takes time. The other way to do it is have one field and split up the flight routes. So one drone does 0 to 50% of the field, the other drone does 50 to 100%. If you're familiar with drone software, there's ways to split up fields like this. But there's one caveat when it comes to that. First of all, you have to make sure the settings on both remotes are exactly the same, which sometimes could be an issue. We ran into that sometimes where the swath would be just a hair different, and then in the middle, you'd have a little bit wider gap than there should have been. And so we don't like that. The other problem is sometimes when you're trying to split the field evenly, one drone is starting at the clear end of the other field and one drone is starting here close to where you're parked. So sometimes it takes a lot of monkeying around to get both drones to start on the same side of the field, and it all just takes time. So that is one of the biggest problems I have with flying 2 drones, is just managing the field setup and all of that, because then when you get to the end of the field, how do you decide which one is flying the boundary route? And it can be a hassle. And the other problem with flying 2 drones is if your trailer is not set up properly, which mine you could land 2 drones on it, but at the same time it was hard to, and just not ideal. If you had it set up to where both of them could land at the same time, fill at the same time, you might somewhat eliminate this issue. But no matter how prepared you are, you're probably going to have a time where both drones are wanting to land at the same time, and then one ends up having to hover or get landed on the ground, and the other one gets filled and swapped batteries and then goes back in the air, and then you can land the other one. So that's all downtime. So how do we get around that? My plan going forward is to split up drones as much as possible. That eliminates the problem for pilots having to mess around with the controller, setting up fields, getting them split evenly, and just eliminates that user error of a gap in the middle or missing a little bit, anything like that. Makes it a lot easier to show up to the field, click the field, set it up for one drone, and away you go. Also, when we would spray with multiple drones, it made it more difficult to move. A lot of guys like to chase their drone along the end of the field, so as you move down the field, you move your truck farther forward, your trailer farther forward, and you can not fly as far empty. So you're kind of limited to how much you can do that when you're flying 2 drones. Most of the time we would park in the middle and then have one drone going to each direction. Sometimes if it was a big enough field, we could move again and then have the same thing, split the field into 4. Still just not as efficient as being able to follow your drone along the field. So that's the biggest thing. Also, the other added benefit to this is you minimize travel time. So with 2 drones, you get a field done faster, and that means you have to move sooner. And when you're moving, you're not spraying, and sometimes we would get done in a certain area and have to drive quite a ways to get to the next field. So If you split drones up, you can kind of keep them in an area where they don't have to move as far to the next field. And also they will be driving less because they will be spending more time at the field spraying. That's just kind of how I look at it. So going forward this year, I'm going to try and have drones split up, pilots split up, and put in different areas to stay close. Have fields all in this general area, have fields in a general area for this guy, and minimize our travel time to get more flight time, which in the end, I think will equal more efficiency. The third and final major problem we face this year, which is part of any business, is just breakdowns. So how do you minimize breakdowns and be prepared for breakdowns? At the beginning of the year, I thought I had plenty of parts for the drones, and really I did, but when it comes to drones, you can't necessarily have every part needed. I guess you could, but I did not have every part needed. So having a backup drone, not a bad idea. Be able to throw one in there, or at least grab parts off of it if it's quick. But if a drone wrecks, you don't want to be spending half a day driving to get parts or waiting to figure out a problem. In that same time, there was one day where I was having issues with the drone, couldn't really figure out what the problem was, had parts to fix the problem, but didn't know what exactly the problem was. So if you have a backup drone that you can just throw in there and still be flying, then someone can take some time and look at this drone while it's not needed to figure out the problem and diagnose it. So that kind of helps with staying efficient and keeping the operation going. Thirdly, just all equipment, pumps, generators, having backups for all of that. We had major generator problems last year and ended up with my big propane powered generator. We had issues and we were fighting it for a day or two. And if you just have a backup that you can throw in there and figure out the problem later or send it off to someone to get the problem fixed, that seems like a no-brainer and something I definitely am going to try and do going forward. So looking back, 3 biggest lessons I learned: systems. Split up drones if possible. I think that'll gain some efficiency, and then also be better prepared for breakdowns. So if you thought this was valuable, hit the subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment, share this with a friend. And if you learned something in your spray drone business or have any thoughts, arguments against what I said, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next one.